And as promised, on to scaling. When your ads are working, what can we be doing both from a smaller micro level, going from, spending $300 a day to $600 all the way to how do you want to get past $100,000 per day? I've helped multiple people scale to $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a day, the largest of that being past $100,000 a day. And that was just through direct coaching and consulting. It was really cool to watch them grow from nothing into something and building a, multi-8-figure business. So this is my favorite topic. This is where I've mostly hung out, spent a lot more of my time and money. I pay attention to the ads. I'm a numbers guy. To me, a lot of this stuff makes sense. I like to try things. I like to see what's going on. So I've just naturally gravitated towards running ads with a high budget. It's just something that I've focused on. I don't like to build stores. I'm not the one doing that. I hire people to write my emails. I have people do all this other stuff. I even pay people for setting up upsells because they're really good at it. I can do it, but I like to put my attention on this because it's what I'm really good at. It's what I like to do as well. So over time, I've naturally built a team that can handle other things as well as scaling, but it's just something I always like to be involved in. So scaling through duplicates. We're going to talk about a lot of different formats with videos and CBOs and all that. You're going to get all of it in this video. Scaling through duplicates. This is by far one of my favorites because there's no risk to anything that's working. So if you're trying to, and we'll talk about this in a second, raise the budget on something that's working from $100 to $200, you are risking that ad group. Or if you're on Facebook, you're risking that ad set. If you're on Google, you are risking that ad. It's the same exact thing on any platform. It is risky. I don't care how you slice it. It doesn't mean it can't work. Doesn't mean there's not ways to do it, and it actually doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it. In fact, there's ways that we want to do it. Like I talked about, if you have 8 things that are working, raise some budget super slightly. It can actually help it stay optimized. The ad platforms like it when you spend more money and you're increasing your budgets. So I really like duplicates because it's easy. However, TikTok is not a huge fan of exact duplicates. So let me give you an example. On Facebook, there was one day where I launched 1,400 new ad sets. It's probably $35,000 a day worth of ad spend. That was my record. It took me like 9 hours. I had a blast, a great time. Hundreds of those were clone copy duplicates with no difference. Absolutely no difference because those audiences had hundreds of millions of people in them. The same thing over on TikTok, I can easily target through US and Canada audiences that have 120, 130, 140 million people. That's not the problem. The problem is TikTok really doesn't like exact duplicates. The first thing I noticed when I tried this is results were terrible. The second thing, when I kind of got them working, I wasn't doing like 20 duplicates. Let me duplicate the same thing 4 times. That could totally work and it still can, but I noticed you do too much of that, even if they're at different budgets. Like I have, 10 of the same exact, let's say I'm targeting cars. They're all cars. Nothing's different about the targeting, the location. They're all targeting cars, even if they're at different budgets. If I have 6 of those or 8 of those in the same campaign, I notice TikTok will basically knock the ad spend down on the entire ad account, and everything will go from spending $1,000 a day to $7. It just won't spend. So I'll have to turn that off, make a support ticket, reach out to them. We'll talk more about how to deal with that problem, which I'm sure you'll run into in a bit, but they're not a huge fan of exact duplicates, so I don't go overboard. I do, very rarely do I do like a direct copy where it's the same budget, same everything. I try to change something. Let me change the budget. Let me add a video. Let me add one extra interest on top of it, just so it's a little different, even though it won't actually really change anything, but it will change the optimizing. Okay, so again, like I said, I prefer to change a video or some sort of variable. Use duplicates for any new variable you want to test. It's the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. If, like I said, if you have new videos, you can force those to spend. But if there's anything where you think, I wonder if that would work. I wonder what would happen if I did this and put those 3 videos with these other 2 ones. Let's just see what happens. Do it with the duplicate. And again, this is more so predicated for those people who have $500 a day in ad spend going on, 1,000, 3,000, whatever you're at, whatever level. Again, there's such little risk because next to nothing you launch will get 0 sales. Like it's going to get something, and then you're going to kill it if it's not working. So you're not going to lose a lot. So that's like the fastest way to learn a lot and get really comfortable inside your ad account. You'd be amazed by the amount of people who come to me who want to do coaching, who are, they're spending a couple $100 a day, but they're like, what do I launch next? And they're like worried to launch stuff. I'm like, dude, you got like 1,600 sales on your pixel. Like everything's like, nothing you launch is going to get 0 sales. Like it's really rare. So just start launching stuff. Just fling it at the wall and see if it sticks. That's literally how I have scaled stuff sometimes to like $70,000 a day. It's just ridiculous. It's almost like a video game. So here's scaling through raising budgets. So we talked about duplicates. Here's more so like, raising budgets directly, okay? Raising those budgets. Rule of thumb, don't raise the budget on anything you can't afford to lose. So if you only have one ad working and you really want it to spend more, that's fine. but be okay with it potentially not working, because it's very likely about 50% of the time where it will stop working. So to give you some statistics, because I build data sheets over time as I'm doing these things, and I notice these things. So for an example, if you're raising the budget on TikTok, over 50% of the time, it does not do better. That's what I've noticed. So more than half the time, it doesn't do better, which means maybe the cost per purchase went up just a little bit, still profitable. Maybe it stayed the same, which is a little less rare, a little less common. And probably 30 to 40% of the time it performs better. Now I've noticed that it only performs better for a couple days, and it usually starts to creep back up, and then I try to raise the budget again. It might work for one more cycle of 2 or 3 days, and then it just gets too expensive. So then that's why during that time I also have to change videos. So that's more into specifics on every ad account. You got to try these things, but rule of thumb, don't raise the budget on anything that you can't afford to lose. Like, hey, I'm not willing to, you got to be willing to turn it off. Obviously, at some point, you're going to lose it. So keep that in mind. Every ad group, anything you launch, any CBO, it's going to be turned off. But we never raise the budget on the only thing that's working, especially when you're just starting. If it's getting you 3 sales a day, keep it. Keep it getting 3 sales a day. Hope that it's going to build more data, because that's going to help you. So I would rather you just duplicate it. So, when you're on the lower side of things in terms of ad spend, you don't have a lot of stuff making you sales, just be cautious of directly raising the budget. Now, as for frameworks of how to raise the budget, we like to raise the budget about 20 to 30% at a time. Okay. Now that won't completely kick it back into the learning phase. When you raise the budget from $100 a day to $200, it's usually going to go back into the learning phase, which just means the ad platform has to re-optimize with it. Doesn't mean it's not going to work, but most of the time when you do an aggressive raise, it's like a 50-50 shot. So I do it frequently because, again, it's not going to get 0 sales. When I go from $250 a day to $500 and half the time it works, well, when it's working, I'm letting it sit for a while. It's going to take at least 4, 5, 6, 7 days for it to stop working. Versus the odds, it's just a game of odds. It's like this is like more educated gambling basically with TikTok ads. But versus if I raise the budget and it doesn't do too well, I'm going to kill it the next day and it's still brought in sales, lost a few $100. That risk to reward ratio is absolutely massive. So you can control that. It's just you're just minimizing your downside and you have a huge open and wide upside. So another thing to keep in mind, I don't raise budgets if it's under $100 a day. There's literally no point, because an average TikTok ad account is going to have like a $15 to a $25 CPP, your cost per purchase. So if you're getting purchases for $20 and you raise it from 100 to 120, in theory, anything can happen, but in theory, you're going to be adding 1 purchase per day. Was it worth risking the ad group that's getting you 5 purchases, assuming it's at 100 a day, getting you an average of 20, every day will be a little different. Is it worth risking something that's getting you 5 a day, profitably, ideally, to just have it get you 1 more sale? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and so I just don't think that risk reward is worth it. It's not a big enough difference for the upside. So that's why I would prefer to duplicate it. Now, over time, you have a lot of stuff working. Sure, raise it. Raise it from 100 to 120. It'll probably work half the time, but you're not going to get many more sales. So that, if it works, it's not doing you many favors. So I frequently go from, $200 a day to $250 or $400 to $500, moves like that, where it's like, it's a little bit of something like, hey, I'm going to get multiple extra sales and I'm hoping that it lowers the cost per purchase as well. So I get even a few extra from that. So I'm doing it when I start talking hundreds of dollars, is usually where I start messing around with this. Like, hey, I just launched, 4 new ads at $200 to $250 a day. A couple of them are working. Let me raise the budget on one of them by $50, see what happens there. So I'm just like trying stuff like that. Another thing to know, you're going to want to raise the budget every 2 to 3 days, no faster. So if something's working, like you can continue raising the budget, go from 200 to 250 to 300 to 375. You could eventually do bigger jumps dollar wise, because as you raise the budget, that percentage gets more diluted. So there's different things you can do, but you don't want to be doing that every day. At fastest, where I've seen it work, do it every other day. Like, hey, today it's working really well. Let me raise the budget from 250 to 300. Okay, I'm going to let it sit. The rest of the day it does good. Tomorrow it does good. The next morning, cool, I'll raise another 50. Let's see how it does. Different things like that. I also haven't seen a lot of success in lowering budgets, which I just want to put it out there. If you raise a budget, it works. A couple days later, you raise it again and it doesn't work. You could lower it, but what I actually do is I just counteract it. I raise it again. So I'll double up because it's not working. Maybe I won't raise it $50, but I'll raise it by $5 or $10. And the reason I do that has nothing to do with the amount of purchases. It has to do with optimizing, because as you change that budget, and actually the larger you change it, you force the ad group to re-optimize. So if it's not working at 400 and you had just raised it, quickly raise it to 450 or 500 and see if that works for you. Raise it to 410 and and see what happens. So there's different things you can do. Again, same thing, just like playing around with the videos that are underneath it. That's kind of the range that I'm playing in. Also, raising budgets, we've also talked about this. That can be an optimizing strategy, raising from 50 to 60 if you have a ton of those working at that price point, and just see what happens. It's really good for learning. We do raise budgets frequently. I more so try to raise budgets on my CBOs. We're going to talk about CBOs here in a second, but they're really volatile. They'll never just work for a long time. So every like 3 days, I raise budgets on my CBOs, and that's more so where I spend my time when it comes to like directly raising the budgets. So another one, you already have your working audiences and stuff, scaling through new videos. I get new videos all the time. One of my brands, I get about 15 to 20 new videos every week. It's very difficult to keep up with launching that many videos. In fact, you can't really do it. So this is one of the easiest ways to scale. If you have, let's say, 2 really good videos that are already working, they're inside most of your ads, they're working well. And by the way, this goes with any platform. Most of the stuff is transferable. If you have 2 that are working really good and you just got 2 more, duplicate a few. Let's say you have 15 things running and 9 of them are doing really good. Take 3 of them that are working great, something like that. Duplicate a few of those and add in the 2 videos. So now you have a total of 4. And again, like we talked about with what might happen is those 2 original ones are probably going to spend the dominant amount of the budget. It is likely that those other ones will warm up and start spending, but they'll usually never take over what I would call a dominant role in terms of the ad spend. So sometimes you have to warm those up inside their own ad first, and then once they're both spending, you can start mixing. But that's a really easy way to scale because you're taking the same audience, everything's the same, you're just now doing different videos, maybe at a different budget. The more videos I like to have, the more videos I have, the higher the budget I like to have, because there's more videos to disperse those funds between. So it's just one of those things to think about. So maybe you're duplicating and you raise the budget from 100 to 150 and you add in 2 videos. That would make a lot of sense. I would do that. Side note, I like my side notes. If you mix old videos and new ones together, typically, we already talked about this, typically the new ones won't spend. I already said that multiple times because it's a really important point. I wanted to make sure you know that. So again, sometimes you got to isolate them. Not a big deal. Okay, high budget scaling. This is a fun one here. Okay, $500 a day or more ad groups is what I consider like high budget scaling. Like, hey, I'm launching stuff that's like more expensive. This is something you probably wouldn't be doing if you're spending less than $1,000 a day. You don't want this to be like, doubling your ad account. I'd rather just be doing like more safe bets, like 150, 200s, just more consistent, especially because your ad account is also not used to something that expensive. And by the way, the best way to do that if you wanted to just go balls to the walls and like double your ad spend would be going here and like using the recommendation that they give you, which it really doesn't mean anything, but I think they just favored it because you got upsold by them. That's literally what it is you're just raising your budget through them. So I highly recommend putting a lot more videos under these. So instead of 3, I'm going to put like 6, 5, 6, 7. That way it can last longer. You basically have more chances to make it work. There's things you can modify, remove something, add in a new one. I don't recommend going beyond 10 videos. I've tried different things with like 8, 9, still sometimes don't even work. And that's where we get more into like the automated ad creative, like dynamic setup on the ad group page. When you're launching your ad group, you have an option for automated creatives. That's where you can do stuff if you have a lot more videos you're trying to test. But 5 to 7 is a sweet spot that I've found. So I still just stay in that range. Now with these, the cool part is I'm killing them if they have 0 sales by the end of the first day. So it'd be super rare if you have something like that at $500 a day when other stuff's working, they get 0 sales. So I'm possibly even going to kill it if it only has 1 to 2 sales. It depends on the budget and how well the ad account's been doing. But if everything's working well and you launch a $500 a day ad, which is pretty high, it's abnormal for you. If you do that and it gets 2 sales, it'd be kind of a red flag. I'd maybe quickly go inside and kill some of the videos because most likely one of those videos just spent like half the budget really quick and got no sales. But I really want to leave it into that second day. Performance will do a little better. If the performance is terrible on day 2, I'll kill it. Usually it's the second and third day where things optimize and must be profitable. If it's not profitable on day 3, I'm going to kill it unless it's breaking even or close to it and I'm like changing around videos. So unless I'm doing something, I'm not just going to let it sit and hope that it starts profiting. That's not really a great strategy. So, I'm looking at it, I'm on top of it, especially with those higher budgets because it makes a difference. It can very quickly swing your margin in a good or a bad way. So, and if you launch these and they start working, quickly duplicate them and put in those other big audiences you already have running at lower budgets. Launch more because now you're graduating from $50 a day budgets to $500. And I'll give you a tip. They operate the exact same. As long as you have big audiences, there's no difference. You're just adding a 0 to the money you're playing with. And so that's what I think is really cool about it because, instead of 3 videos, you have like 5 or 6. It's not that big of a deal. But now you're running bigger ads and you're more diversified and protected. Whereas if you have a bunch of small ones and the one ad that you're looking up to, like, oh, oh, it's on a pedestal that's at $500 a day. The problem is if this one swings and stops performing, it's going to drastically affect everything. Whereas if you have 8 of these, not a big deal, so you just kind of become more diversified there by having more of those higher budgets. So that is high budget scaling. Now let's talk about CBOs. There's a lot of stuff to go through with the campaign budget optimizations. CBOs are really a hit or miss on TikTok. I truly have not had one that works for a month, which on Facebook we do. CBOs are very fantastic. On TikTok, it's hit or miss. Usually they only do good for a couple days. That's why you have to constantly raise the budget, change the videos. And just like, by the way, I want to point this out, just like how in an ad group over here, the ad groups you're running, this is where you're spending the budget on the ad group level. You would have the budget on the campaign level, right? CBO, campaign budget optimization. You could modify ad groups and add, remove, kill ad groups inside of a CBO, just like you would ads inside of an ad group. Okay, it's the same thing there. You just now have 2 layers of things you can change. You can change the ad groups, or before you kill those ad groups inside the CBO, you can modify the videos inside of them, okay? But basic rules behind CBOs, $100 a day minimum. Go ahead and try one below that, but it's probably not gonna do that well. 3 ad groups minimum, I'm shooting for 5. 5 is kind of my minimum with 4 to 5 videos. Again, 2 videos under each, that's always a minimum on TikTok. If you wanna do it, go ahead, but I always recommend more. My preference is to put 3 to 4 audiences that are already working with 3+ videos. That's like a minimum for me with $100 to $200 a day starting. And I rarely launch one CBO at once. I want to go launch multiple. But the thing is, you're basically taking your working audience. So as soon as you're spending $300 to $500 a day, you have 4 or 5 audiences that are working really good, you're going to go put those over into a CBO. And I always recommend adding this extra one. I never even wrote this down, but add a no interest ad group. So this is something I do where you literally just have no targeting. So inside the interest, duplicate one of those. So when you go launch your CBO, you're going to be duplicating the ad groups inside of there once you launch it with the first one. On one of those, just remove the interest and change your name to no interest. So just don't target anything. No recommended, no nothing. I always like to have 1 or 2 that target nothing. They work really well. It's a very broad audience. TikTok likes it, especially inside of CBOs. So I like to put that in there for a little bit of it's just another variable, some diversity. So you will have to adjust things. Keep that in mind. It's never smooth sailing with CBOs, but nonetheless, it's a great way to scale. And by the way, it's a great reason to scale because you're basically spending a much higher budget, but there's more variables to control underneath it. So it's a little bit more of a secure way to spend higher budgets. Again, CBOs are kind of hit or miss, so you're turning it off pretty quick if it's not working, but it's a great way to start increasing budgets if you need more ideas of stuff to launch. Now, high budget CBOs, let's talk about this. This is quite the wild card with TikTok. This is how I explain it, okay? Absurd amount of budget, followed by an absurd amount of ad groups with an absurd amount of videos under each. That would be exactly what I said if you said, how should I run really high budget CBOs? I would say that. Just the word absurd comes to mind because at TikTok, you want options, you want to be flexible, and you want to be able to modify. That is the name of the game. So I like to launch high budget CBOs, 500 plus a day, once I'm already spending multiple times that, right? I've also launched CBOs on TikTok. The biggest one is only maybe $7,500 a day, 5,000, maybe $7,500 on Facebook. I've done $20,000 a day CBOs, much larger. On TikTok, man, it's just more inconsistent. If I'm being honest, I don't feel comfortable launching a $20,000 a day on there. But nonetheless, it's kind of progression as you go. So the reason I do that way, there's already sales coming in, profit daily, so it's not actually a very risky move. But there is that jump where you try to go to the higher budget stuff. You were always running $300 to $500 a day CBOs, but now I want to launch one for $1,000 or $1,500. It's bigger. It's going to swing things more if it doesn't work. But the worst case is it performs terrible for 2 days before I kill it, and it still would have gotten some sales. So on these higher budget ones, I really like 5 ad groups or more and 5 videos or more under each. I'm basically just trying to have a bunch of audience diversity. Now, when I run high budget CBOs, every time without failure, I'll just put this in here so that you have it. I have some sort of lookalike audience / a custom audience. So again, we'll jump back over to the ad account. You go to assets and audiences. You can create custom audiences, off your purchases, off your page views. We'll go through and create some of those later. I'll add that in. But I didn't even spell this right. Lookalike. So you're doing those. It's an audience that's similar to people who've already engaged or bought your stuff. That's great. I'm also going to have, on no interest on a higher budget stuff. I'm always going to have 2 of these or more. I'm going to have, a recommended. I'm going to have another one that's recommended with with engaged interest or expanded interest, like we had talked about. So those are 2 different ones that are really the same targeting, just one you're expanding the interest. And I'm gonna have like 3 to 5 that are like really good broad interests. So there you go. You can screenshot that if you want. I know this is kind of a mess, but I wanted to add that in there. That's usually how like the basic structure of my high budget CBOs go. So I'll have I'll have like 1 or 2 of these, 2 of these. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10. If you're launching something $1,000, I'm really looking for like 6, 7, 8 is kind of my sweet spot when you're like launching something that's like abnormally higher budget. So the final one, I believe it's the final one in here. Nope, it's definitely not. There's so many ways to scale. Scaling through new products. This is a really cool one, and I'll be honest, I've worked with a lot of people. I have a lot of friends in this industry as well. I've met a ton of e-commerce business owners, and not a lot of people use this. So I think you could use it to your advantage. It's something I've always done and probably haven't done enough of. Okay, scaling through new products. So I've actually found multiple of my best performing products because I was selling a similar one, and I decided to test new ones that were relating to it. So products that you upsell, and we're going to talk more about this in some of the other videos. It's one of those outside variables. You want to upsell other products. Almost any product you upsell, well, you should get some videos for it and run ads for it too. But for some reason, most people don't. They also don't go testing their products because they think they've already found one. But just because you have a product that's making you money doesn't mean it's the best performing product in the industry. And it also doesn't mean it's going to perform the best on your ad account. Every ad account's different. So that's why I like to try new stuff, and I've actually found some of my biggest winners. I was selling a dog product that did like $300,000 in sales. And then I started selling the product I was upselling, did 2.1 million with that product, almost 10 times as much. So think about it like that. If you have an ad account making consistent sales in a niche, it's just like launching a new campaign that you're testing. It's the same thing. It's rare that it'll get 0 sales. It's very likely it gets something. So you're in the best position ever to test similar products. So I would definitely do that. Other than that, I like to try higher ticket products. If something's already making a lot of money, it's just it gives you the best possible outcome. Honestly, because if I'm gonna go through the effort of doing it and something's already working on the ad account, I really want to boost up my average order values. And the easiest way to do that, because your ad account's already warmed up, it knows you're getting purchases around $20, it tends to feed you cheaper cost per purchases, even though the product price that you're trying to test is much higher. So it's just one of those things that I really like to do, scaling through new products. If there's anything that catches your eye, just get some videos for it. It's not too difficult. Now the final one, finally the final one. There's a lot of different things to do. Multiple ad accounts. We talked about a way to set up a proxy with a server browser where you can just have a little more security. But in general, just having another ad account is always beneficial. So as I start making good money, as the store's working, when I'm passing $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, it's worth it to start another one to have a backup. This is something that I did because of my traumatizing experiences on Facebook, to say the least, because Facebook would constantly disable ad accounts with no warning and really for no reason. I wasn't breaking their policy. I wasn't doing anything wrong. The representatives assigning me couldn't figure out any solution because I wasn't doing anything wrong. It's pretty simple. So what I would do is I would have like 5 pixels on my store for 5 different ad accounts. My brother's ad account. I'd buy ad accounts from everybody I knew, random people, friends, whoever. I'd say, hey, I'll give you a couple $100. Can you send me your Facebook login? I promise I won't mess with anything. I'm just using it on the business side. And then you can turn off the notifications so it doesn't bother them. So I would do that and just have them running in the background collecting data. You don't actually need to run ads, but if you have the pixel on there, it's collecting data. And then eventually I would always have one, always, on Facebook that was like running like a $20 a day basic ad in the background. Even if it wasn't working, I would never even check it, but just to like warm it up. So that when, let's say, an ad account did get disabled, it wasn't a shock to the ad account, which would then risk that one getting disabled, that I tried to spend a bunch of money right away. So on TikTok, you can do like a more chilled out version of this. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but you can just add in another pixel, another ad account if you want. Over time, assuming your ad account's tracking, the second one's tracking and working fine, you can run very similar versions of what's already running and performing well for you on the new ad account. Sometimes it works really well. Other times it doesn't on TikTok. It's always worth a try once you're doing a good sales volume. For me, on TikTok, honestly, it's been a great platform, and it's still such a new platform, and it has such great support. It's not giving us problems. And if you're getting into that platform, in my opinion, before like the end of 2023, which is a while until then, if you're there, relatively within the first few years of the platform, you're going to get like preferential treatment. Your ad account's going to be warmed up and very grandfathered in, to say the least, by the time they roll out all these other restrictions and features that would kind of make it more difficult for new advertisers. So I don't really think you'll have a problem. This is just me being super secure and cautious. It's worth a try if you're bored and you have a ton of time and other ad accounts. Add it in, throw a pixel on. Doesn't cost you much to do that. $20 for an app or something, and just see where it goes. So that's a lot of strategies around scaling. There's so much stuff we can do, but a lot of duplicates, a lot of stuff with the budgets, playing around. TikTok's constant game, because it really is a very high fluctuating platform in terms of results. So you got to be changing out videos and a lot of stuff like that. So that's why we're doing a lot of activity. There's a lot of movement, more so than other platforms. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the scaling video. Definitely a little bit of a longer one, but a super good one, very important, and it'll help you be very profitable as well. So hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one.